Hello, hopefully you can see and hear me and everybody is all well and good. So after, not a lot of parcels coming along recently, everything's come along at once. So the PDR M82D came along, which is really cool and all in complete working order. It seems really, really nice condition. Also calibrated in 2010, so it's not been out of service all that long, which is nice. So there's this. I'll flick this on and show it in a minute. What else is there? The Swiss helmet came. Now, unfortunately, although this is technically the right size for my head, it is a bit too small, so it's not very comfortable, but it is a cool helmet at least. That's the M71, the one that replaced the M18. And a new mask from Hype came that, is really good and actually quite practical for all the Corona stuff. It's a Chinese one, if I can remember the name he said it was called, but it's one that comes with a voice diaphragm. So a half-face mask with a voice diaphragm is actually really cool. And it just takes 3M filters, so you can put real 3M filters on or knock off 3M ones or whatever. Now, Rick Moranis had a much bigger helmet in Spaceballs, but yeah. This is the one that the Swiss sort of replaced the old Stauhelms with, which is basically a Stauhelm, just no ridges on it, but it's pretty protective, actually. But yeah, so the Plessy is really cool, so let's flick it on. So I've put some batteries in it. So you put it on like the old Plessy, turning it that on. It does a test, which is a bit annoying. It's actually got a backlight, as you can see on this one, so you can read it in the dark easier. So you've got your sound module. That's your very high-pitch Geiger speaker. Yeah, warning, high noise level during operation, no shit. So that's that. And then obviously that's your probe in there. It's a gamma-only probe, but just to prove this works, if I take it over to some pitch blend. Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, pretty cool thing. I won't leave it on for long because, as I said, it's a loud sort of noisy thing. But yes, it's a radiation Geiger. It's the one the British Army were using up until about 10 years ago, probably. The one from the war in Iraq sort of period. It's basically, see that orange one over there, the regular PDR M82? It's a version of that that's like really, really good in comparison. So got a backlight. It actually goes to background levels of radiation. It goes to, as long as it's 1 microsievert, it records on there. But I'll flick it off now because otherwise it'll keep making loud noises. Probably a whole mix of stuff shed on fire. It wouldn't surprise me if they've still got some of these in stock. Yeah, so I'll pop that down there for now, but I'll do a proper video on it at some point. But it was calibrated in 2010, this one, so it's obviously not been out of service all that long. It came with all the calibration documents. So yeah, calibration date, 22nd of July, 10. So, that's been in service for quite a while. So yeah, for those of you who can't hear it, it's raining really heavily here. We're having like a proper storm day. So they're about 200 quid bare. You can sometimes get them cheaper, but if you want to get one or buy it now when they turn up every now and then, you just have to pay about 200 quid. Again, you can get better Geigers that are more modern than that for that sort of money, but it's actually a very nice unit, that one. They'll get around to doing a proper video on it some time. Depends what country you're in, but Soviet helmets were pretty good. It depends what you want the helmet for, but in general, most of the old Cold War steel pots are absolutely fine if you want something that offers very basic head protection. Is different on different units shed on fire. That one I will not be opening up at all because Surviving the Apocalypse is saying to me when he knows people have opened them up, they found wires break really easily because they were designed, to be completely dismantled on like a lab bench. Oh, you can see it there. I'm not getting it out at the moment. But for all the people spamming, show us this, show us that, what's your favourite list, I won't bother answering them because, I get those every stream and it gets pretty frustrating. I'm good, Train Spotter, thank you. But yeah, some units are very simple to recalibrate. With some units, it's literally like turning a screw, like a zeroing screw inside. Other units are way more complicated. But basically what they do when they calibrate a unit is essentially put it in a known radiation field, and then they calibrate the unit until it actually shows the exact same dose that, they know is being produced in the air. Well, the problem is World War II gas masks aren't practical anymore, so I don't know what you mean by a good cheap one. If you just mean a cheap one, any that turns up for a decent price. But yeah, as I said, if I keep getting spammed with lots of questions like what's your favourite this, what's your favourite that, I won't be answering them. I reckon the Mark 4s and Mark 5s look very cool if you just wanted one for display. But so for some people it's evening, some people are saying it's way too early in the day to be streaming, and for me it's 2 p.m. So there we go. I wonder if it's possible with this to turn the sounder unit off. Like obviously I don't want to do anything that would damage it, but just wondering if it's possible to actually turn the sounder off. I guess that just rotates and doesn't do anything. Yeah, sadly, it's not just like a little headphone jack, because if it was, this would be quite good. You could just pull it out, but sadly, it's not. Because that's what Surviving the Apocalypse is saying. He says you have to be really careful with the bottom of these units, because the kind of wires inside aren't that durable, even if the external case is designed to be really durable. So basically, unlike the regular PDR M82, it's got a better strap. It's got a housing case for all the little bits in it, so it all sits together on a kind of rubberized case. What I do need to work out is how to detach the what do you call it from it. If you just see there, you can see how the actual unit is like a classic PDRM once it's not inside the housing. But I need to work out how to take off without cutting it this massive lanyard thing that has the instruction manuals on it, because I don't want a massive cable like this trailing everywhere. This is basically just telling you how to put everything in there and set it up, which, it's pretty straightforward. But yeah. Let's see if it actually fits in there properly. But that's an alright idea, Shed on Fire, if it fits, but I don't know how well it will. Won't fit down that side. No, it won't fit down that side. Because again, I think this is designed that you keep it somewhere else, so I have to work out how to disconnect that. But obviously, yeah, there's not space to put the manual down there, because it's, again, sadly, I mean, I could try and shove it down, but it's not going to be a very good fit. But let's see if I can get it in there, because it's going to do that look, which will look crap. So yeah, I have to work out how to detach this at some point, so it's not, waving around with all of it. But yeah, it is a really cool unit, and as I said, it's nice to have an actual practical Plessy rather than one that's sort of completely impractical like the regular PDR M82s, because you have to be being exposed to really dangerous levels of radiation before they even register on there. Yeah, Marcus has just answered you there. We had a really sad fucker report me to the police because he was jealous of the channel, basically. And then the police turned up, were very polite, and realised their time was being wasted. So, the rain started very heavily again. Yeah, glad I'm not outdoors today. Don't talk about the people who did it in the chat, just because I don't want, any more shit coming up if there's police looking into all the stuff they've been doing. So I'll delete your comment, Marcus. But yeah, as I said before, I'd rather not. I can't actually remove your comment because you're a mod. So can you delete it, please? Thank you. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, because the police are technically still looking into some of the people doing it, funnily enough, because, you know, they've been breaking laws themselves, I wouldn't really want to comment on active police investigations. But as I said, we'll leave it at that, because as I said, stop mentioning it, everybody, otherwise I'll start handing out timeouts or blocks, because as I said, I've given you all you need to know, so don't keep asking questions about it. But yeah, so yeah, that's not most of my helmet collection. Most of my helmet collection is more tidily put away in a different room, but these are just the ones people ask to see on streams a lot, so they're the ones that show up here. But yeah, I'll probably at some point end up putting a load of these ones away into the helmet boxes sort of again, and then only have one or two behind me, because otherwise it starts getting too cluttered. I'm going to permanently ban that person, Marcus, but there you go. No, that's a very good price for random Hungarian at the moment, considering, you know, what the prices of masks are at the moment. That's annoying, Rich, but yeah, I hope that all works all right. And thank you for the person saying nice videos. Which one? Mark 6s or Mark 6A, Swaggerino? The normal Mark 6 is an absolute shit helmet unless you're using it as a prop. The Mark 6A is good, however, because the regular Mark 6 doesn't literally protect you from anything. It's essentially just a plastic helmet. Thank you, Stephen. He said, if the world ends, we have no chance because of all the world's nuke plant will melt down from the lack of maintenance. Yeah, I agree with you there. You know, watch threads and stuff like that. If you know, I think most people are delusional if they think if there was a full nuclear exchange, everything would be fine in a couple of years. It won't. That gets asked every stream at the moment, Capella, but I don't mind answering you. Although this one might start factoring into that now because it's quite comfortable, and stuff like that. But what I've got coming is, well, not coming, but one ones I use a lot is the Alpha Mesh little dust mask, the JSP Force 8. Probably start using this one quite a bit now. Is it green, Swaggerino, or is it black? That's the easiest way of telling them apart. If it's the green ones, they're useless. They're good as props and maybe protecting your head from banging it on the ceiling. But regular Mark 6 helmets are totally crap, I'm afraid. And I'm not saying that to shit on you for buying them. I'm just saying because I've got them in my collection of everything else. And Mark 6s were like worse than the early steel helmets. But if you've got a regular Mark 6, just use it as a prop, basically, or, you know, something to protect your head if you're going to bang it on ceilings. The Mark 6A is the one that's actually useful because that has a Kevlar filler. The regular Mark 6 doesn't. But I think I've done videos talking all about that before, but yeah. So I said, this is a pretty comfortable mask, what it is. Eight, Justin Jackson. But yeah, there we go. So this is actually quite a good mask, but don't know how well you can hear the voice diaphragm there, but it is nice to have a half-face mask with a voice diaphragm on. So yeah, this might be one of the ones I end up using a fair bit more. Read the label inside, Tamas, it will say, but if it's green, it shouldn't be, because they literally made the Mark 6As all black to differentiate them from the Mark 6s. I don't like high-cut helmets myself. I prefer proper helmets. If the person's saying, do I have any hearing protection with communications on them? No, because I've got no use for them. No, not got any VPUs, because again, don't really have any use for them. Because it was during the 1980s shed on fire when they bought lots of shit equipment like the L-85s. Because basically, even if you come up with a design that should be good on paper, remember, pay the lowest amount of money to companies to make it. And it was more of a show-off thing, saying, look, we've got a new helmet, not it's actually a practical helmet. Yeah, if you type in Mark 6 helmets and Swaggerino and find the ones that are the black design, they're all right. They're still not a very good helmet in terms of the shape of the helmet, because Mark 6s are also a pain in the ass because of the way they were cut, where they would cause issues with vests riding up into them and stuff like that. But the Mark 6A, which is the black one, that's worth getting because that's a Kevlar 3A helmet, or at least Kevlar level 2. You know, it'll stop most pistol rounds. But yeah, the regular Mark 6, it offers less protection than all the old British Mark 2, Mark 3, and Mark 4 helmets. I've got a Mark 7 down there, and obviously that's my newest helmet, the Virtus one, or Virtus, however it's called, and obviously that's by a mile my best helmet because of what the material inside it is. The Mark 7 is a very, very good Kevlar helmet. What year was it made, Thomas? It might be if it was a really early production one, they didn't think of changing the colour to differentiate them. Well, yes, because it's a Soviet mask, so it'd be fine with a Soviet coat. Again, a truck Campbell, it depends where you are for the budget. In the UK, it certainly isn't the case because Paskets are hard to get here. If you're in the US, that might be the case, but not here. Again, it's normally your country's surplus army helmets, the cheapest thing in each country. Yeah, in a minute, although it's at the bottom of the pile, I'll get out my British Mark 7 helmet and take the cover I've got off of that, because the Mark 7 is my favourite Kevlar helmet. But the Virtus is actually thermoplastic inside, not Kevlar. £20, Owen, Ewan, something like that. A bunker, then. Radioactive cow, if that doesn't count, there literally isn't an answer because you're screwed in that sort of situation. Just keep trying to reword it, Ethan, because what's probably happening is you're typing something that YouTube is shadow banned, which happens a lot, and then annoyingly lots of people blame me for it, saying, oh, you're hiding my comments. No, I'm not. I just can't see your comments full stop because you're saying something YouTube doesn't like. Although sometimes YouTube's list of words that are like shadow banned are so weird. What was the weirdest one we had? I think it was safety. Like, we got on the stream because there was somebody who kept trying to say something to do with the word safe or safety, and their comment kept not showing up, and they eventually wrote it in a way it did show up. So I said to everybody in the stream, right, you know, when there's like 50 odd people watching, I said, all of you say safety. And only 2 people's comments with it in came through. Everybody else said, you know, I said it and it didn't show up. What's that, Stephen? I'm going to have to look it up. Oh, it's a fictional gun. I have no idea about that then. The Avon CT12 is still my favourite gas mask. The best steel helmets, I'd say, Truck Campbell. If you ignore modern steel helmets that a couple of nations still make, probably East German M56 helmets because of the shape of them. It meant they offered very good ballistic protection for a steel helmet. But again, if you want ballistic protection, you don't buy a steel helmet because they're not designed for that. Yeah, if it's in all working condition radioactive cow, yes. With how prices are at the moment, but generally most of them have been like £200. If you've seen one for 80, I imagine there'll be a defect with it, unless the seller is just literally wanting to get rid of it at the moment and still make a profit. Because bear in mind, it used to be like £30 to £50 for FM12s and like S10s if you were lucky. Both variants of it will fit on Ethan fine, because even if you got a GOST or a NATO version, the S6 is a NATO mask, so both will screw on fine. Yeah, it's very strange, Richard, isn't it? Because before it used to be mods could get away with saying certain things even if normal people couldn't with YouTube, but now it seems they just ban loads and loads of words. You know, the rain's really heavy now. Don't know if you can hear that on the camera, but, you know, it's pretty loud to me here. If I open this window up a bit, you might be able to hear it even louder. Hear that? 50 to 100 pounds the wolf and you won't be able to get it working is the simple answer. Again, what I want to make very clear to some people, because some people don't seem to get this, if you're buying stuff for protection, don't buy really, really old gear when it comes to gas masks, helmets, you know, Geiger counters, all that sort of stuff. If you want it to be really accurate and good, you need to buy the modern stuff, you know, or protective. If you just want something for collector's value or because it looks cool, sure, go ahead. But, you know, I've seen a lot of people asking me questions like that to do with really old, like, you know, Geigers that barely work. And you're kind of like, yeah, they're cool bits of history, but I would not want to rely on one for accurate readings. Right, if somebody's insinuating I'm doing something illegal, I'm blocking them. I don't have anything that's illegal. Everything I own is perfectly legal. If you don't know all the stuff I've got, watch the videos on it. Is it the yellow stuff inside, Tamas? Because it's weirdly, the green outer case of the Mark 6 has black carbon filler stuff in it, black nylon filler in it. Swaggerino, funnily enough, they're actually made better than the original German helmets were. And again, this is something that upsets all the weeaboos, but I don't care. German World War II helmets are actually shit when it came to protection, because the Germans cheaped out on the steel that they made them from, same with their German World War I helmets. Again, although I don't like videos of people shooting World War II helmets because of the rarity of them, there's lots of videos where you can literally watch comparisons side by side of pistol rounds being shot at, you know, World War II steel helmets, and look, the German ones literally come off the worst every time. As I've said over and over, the Virtus helmet. Let me get the Mark 7 out if I can do it without knocking loads of shit over. Right, so British Mark II helmet. That's that there. Yugoslavian style helm, the M5985. This is a very good steel helmet. Swiss Civil Defence helmet. German firefighters helmet. And here we go. The Mark 7 with the cover on it. Obviously, this isn't an actual cover for the Mark 7 because it's flecked-on cover, and I've put a duty thing on it. But the actual Mark 7 underneath. Yes, Cookie. Don't rely on Google or clickbait sites to tell you what the best masks are. That's not going to end well. There was somebody in probably a Terra P, the Wolf, or a GMC 500 Plus, or one of the later GMC series. You just want to get a modern sort of compact digital thing. You don't want a big old clunky device. But yeah, this is the Mark 7. So the Mark 7 has a bit of a weird shape, but it's really comfortable. And it's actually very good protection from a Kevlar helmet. Because this stops even 7.62 by 25mm Tokarev rounds, where most Kevlar helmets don't manage that. I would recommend a lead pig for a DP63 screen, Marcus. For strontium 90, no, you wouldn't need it, but yes, for I'd say the lead pig is the easiest way of storing it. A Plessy or a Siemens, I'll show you in a minute, Henry. PDRM82D Geiger counter, the one Britain was using up until fairly recently, if I can get this on correctly. Does this stop rifle rounds? No. Does that one stop rifle rounds? Yes, but you'd still probably die from the impact. I am not going to get into what should fast food workers be wearing because I have no job to do with that, and I have no guidance for it. Ask a doctor. But anyway, so yeah, this is the Mark 7, and the Mark 7 I actually really like for a Kevlar helmet, especially because at one point these were being sold quite cheap as surplus over here, but sadly then the government decided to sell them all to Ukraine in the Ukrainian civil war and sell them to both sides. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? Other than profiteering. But yeah, the Virtus is good. So the helmet I got recently was this one, for whoever was asking about this, Henry. The Swiss M71 helmet. Although this one's a bit too tight to fit me properly. But there we go, Swiss M71 helmet. So yeah, there's that one. There's also the Plessy, or the Siemens technically, because it's a later model one. I'm not going to turn it all on again now, but there you go, modernish British Geiger counter. Yes, you can. I've mounted my pulsar to it before, but yeah, it has several mountings that can go on the Virtus helmets by default, including like face shields and everything else. They can actually stop A-Truck Campbell if you watch the videos on it. 7.62 NATO, amazingly, at those sort of distances. But again, your brains would probably, you probably have brain damage from how much deformation the helmet gets stopping around, or your neck would snap. But, the fact that the helmet can stop it is a good step forwards, because that at least means that, you've got the best level of protection you can really sort of have. eBay, Chris. Everything I buy is literally eBay for the most part. So I would specifically say if I bought it somewhere else, but no, it was eBay. Literally search Swiss helmet on eBay. Look at the results. Right, Sparrow? Look at how, Marcus, look at how Surviving the Apocalypse has done it. Put it in like sealable plastic bags and then put it in the lead pig and it'll be fine. No, eBay doesn't scam you. Again, you can get sellers on eBay that are a bit dodgy, but you do get buyer protection. I mean, every now and then I will get a seller where the item takes ages to come. You go through all the stuff and eventually, you think it's not worth constantly trying to get eBay to be involved. But if you're buying something that you want, no, eBay's fine. Right, I'll quickly Google that, Jonah, because you keep saying about it. Sebsten Booch helmet. Oh, it's one of those like high cut helmets, is it? Yeah, I'm not a fan of that design, but if it works, it works. But it's like a Pasket style helmet, isn't it? Wow, I definitely didn't think that was a stove I was putting on my head just then. Yes, Ethan, use silicone lubricant. You can clean it off with that. I bought mine Radioactive Cow through Hype, so you'd have to ask him, and I don't think he's got any more for sale. So again, lots of this stuff is people might send me stuff as gifts. I'll buy it through eBay or I'll get it on a private sale. And obviously, here's the problem: if I've got it on a private sale and the person only had one to sell, they're not going to be able to sell them to other people. I just don't like the look of them shed on fire, and they give you less head protection. If I'm wearing a helmet, I would rather it protect the most amount of my head possible. Again, if you prefer other helmets, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong to like those helmets, but I'd never get the people who say, why don't you like this? Okay, you don't like it, but why don't you like it? And keep asking me over and over. If your favorite color was orange or red or something, I wouldn't keep saying to you, yeah, but why do you like red? Why don't you like orange more than red? Why don't you like blue more than red? It's that sort of thing. It's personal preference. Too big, Justin. As you can see, no matter how many times I clear it up, it starts spiraling out of control again. Well, bear in mind, Swaggerino, of all the Corona stuff, lots of stuff just stopped coming out of Russia for ages. Yeah, the thing is shed on fire. If I'm mounting NVGs on it, like I can with that, I'd rather have the best protection plus a good NVG mount, not, one or the other. Because I know some people buy plastic airsoft helmets, don't they? Right, the person who keeps spamming questions, I'm getting rid of them because they've been timed out several times now. So, yeah, because the thing is, a lot of people just buy airsoft helmets for NVG mounts. That's fine if you just want it for an NVG mount, but obviously it gives no protection. Again, it depends what you need it for, really, doesn't it? Again, also it's a lot about weight, isn't it, and stuff like that. Mim equals MC squared, because you know, it's like some people do not want heavy armor to carry around, and you know, if they had the choice between lightweight armor they'd wear or heavy armor they wouldn't wear. Obviously, lightweight armor is a better choice, but obviously, it will depend on the factory, Claude, but a lot of them are, yes, because they're made from more modern steels and, you know, just mass-produced. German World War II helmets were not very good at all if you've actually watched stuff on them, or at least the quality was really inconsistent, especially later in the war when the Germans, you know, got quite low on good quality steels. That might sound weird, but weirdly, German people have this kind of weird fucking fetish type stuff over Nazi Germany. And a lot of the gear they made wasn't that good. You know, the fact that they were still relying on horses towards the end of the war. But yeah, a good example of that is the Chinese GK80 helmet, which I've got down there. I won't get out. The modern production Chinese steel helmets are actually better than pretty much any World War II steel helmets, just because they're made from more modern steels that, you know, have less imperfections in them. It's like the kind of thing if you said, if you got a random medieval sword, even if it was a really good one back in the day, and then you had a modern, you know, like sword that had all the impurities removed in, you know, like by a blacksmith today, the modern ones are just better built. Because, you know, although there's some historical steels, you know, like Damascus steel and some of the others that people really sort of are sought after, for the most part, lots of old stuff isn't actually good, you know, especially due to age. It just gets worse with time. I'm not a fan of the GP7. If you want to get one, Anthony, get one, but they're not very good masks. Well, in theory, Jack Guyver, you can get like custom mounts to fit night vision to fit pretty much any helmet you want. How well it would like line up with your eyes properly and stuff is another question. But in theory, you can mount night vision onto most helmets if you can be bothered to get all the parts. Yeah, well, that's the thing, Jonah, isn't it? If you're in a country where you can buy a certain thing cheap, then it's worth getting. But it's like, again, the British Mark 7 helmet, you know, the one I was just showing just now. At one point in Britain, and a few other places, you could get these dirt cheap, despite the fact that these are, you know, level 3A Kevlar helmets, and that's really comfortable. But lots of people are like, oh, the shape looks weird, so they must be shit, and, you know, weird stuff like that. But the actual level of protection he's offered as Kevlar helmets, it was one of the best, but we just didn't keep it in service that long because that thing came along to replace it when we bought them under contract. Yeah, Richard, it's because of people fetishizing Third Reich, basically. That's all it is. It's like, again, so when you can find like Soviet, British, American gear, you know, for like a tenth of the price sometimes as Nazi German stuff, you kind of do wonder why some people are so obsessed with it. All right, Hype. I was showing that mask earlier. I'll do a proper video on it soon, but yeah, this is actually quite comfortable for me. So let me put this on again, just so you can see it on. We'll see if it works all right with a Mark 7 helmet as well, actually. That'll be interesting. This might be one I actually end up wearing out quite a bit because it's got the voice diaphragm on. So let me just get this on, which I bet I'm going to completely fail at now. There we go. So yeah, it's a pretty comfortable mask actually. I might still adjust some of the plastic strap bits a bit more just because, you know, that's digging in a little bit. But overall, this is very comfortable, at least around the nose area and everything. Hype will tell you what the mask is. Because I've already forgotten the name of it without looking up his message. When I do the review, obviously, I'll look up the name of it beforehand. People still spamming the chat on there. Do you know what? I know this person's being a retard, but I guess he has no idea what moustache Hitler had. He didn't have a moustache like this. Oh, Strong M50G, thank you. I guess that's why it says strong there. I didn't really notice that before. I thought it was just saying this is strong plastic. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Germany in World War II did definitely make some good stuff. But yeah, like I say, not everything they made was good. This is the issue. And some people will take the attitude that if the Germans made it, therefore it's better than something everybody else made, which is really not the case. And it's certainly not the case if you're buying it as, really, really overpriced collectible surplus. Well, it's not even really surplus, is it? You know what I mean? Like 60 years after World War II or whatever, it's, not going to be in very good condition. But yeah, if you want to see it hype, I'll turn it back on. But as I was saying to some other people, I'm going to have to figure out soon how to remove this, because this is an absolute pain in the arse having this sort of tied onto it. So we'll keep all the stuff in the housing. It will do its little test when it goes on with its incredibly loud speaker. And there you go. It's ticking away very loudly at background levels. You have to have at least one micro sieve or one micro gray to make the display register anything. So at background, it's still counting background radiation, but you don't start seeing it on there until you get to one, essentially like micro sieve at background. But yeah, so it's a lovely unit, but and I said it's got like a proper probe with this one and all that. Interestingly, this is a gamma probe, so the probe is still for gamma radiation, but it's got, a big probe, which is kind of cool. So yeah, what I'm going to have to do is very carefully at some point take off all the crappy sort of, and just store it in a box somewhere, all like the, you're a dumb soldier, this is how you put a battery in a unit kind of instructions. But yeah, it's got the really loud chirper on it. But I like how you can see in principle that it is basically the PDR-M82 just with loads of shit bolted onto it and improved. And of course, the other thing I really like on this is it has a backlight, so you can actually read it in the dark, unlike that one. No, I never got into metal detectors. It gets brought up a lot, but the answer is no, I've not ever got into them. There's quite a lot of metal detector enthusiasts that watch my channel and chat with me about stuff. So I find metal detecting interesting. It's just nowhere to do it near me. I've already got too much stuff. But yeah, this one, the interesting bit hype was they last calibrated this in 2010, so it's probably not been out of service very long. Cool, what was that? Sorry, glow in the dark? If I missed your previous comment, but if you're on about the PDR-M82D, yeah, they were the war in Iraq era Geigers for the British Army, because the actual PDR-M82s are from the 1980s, but I think the D model was like the retrofitted sort of new ones they made for looking for Saddam's WMDs, which meant either Saddam didn't have WMDs there or the PDR-M82Ds didn't work, but I think it's probably the former. But yeah, they're great units. I said I spent about 200 quid on that one because they don't turn up on eBay very often. And when you see one in basically pristine condition, I was like, yeah, I'll probably ought to get that. Yonan, people aren't meant to ask political questions on here, but I think he's been doing a shit job recently. That's as far as we'll go into it. But, the point is these streams, for the most part, aren't to argue about politics, because sadly a lot of people don't seem to get that. I don't have an SSH 60. I have an SSH 40, whatever the SSH 40 something or other was, that was then later mass produced slightly differently for other Warsaw Pact nations. But yeah, there's the SSH 40, isn't there? The SSH 60. Is it then the SSH 66? And I think the SSH 60 is just a modernized SSH 40, isn't it? But isn't the 66 the one that in theory is meant to be better, but a lot weren't? All right, I'm glad you enjoyed the videos, though, Chris. Well, they're going to offer you protection, at least from blunt force trauma to a degree, a truck camper, and some stab protection, but not very much. The better stuff you can get for not much money is motorcycle armor. because a lot of right armor essentially is motorcycle armor. It's designed so if you fell off a speeding vehicle, you know, you wouldn't smash yourself up too badly. So right armor in principle is a very similar thing. You know, if somebody hits you with something at speed, it doesn't smash you up too badly. Yeah, well, that's the thing we were on about earlier in the stream hype, you know, about people sort of fetishizing Nazi German gear when, as we know from ballistic tests, you know, the old German World War II helmets weren't that great. As much as they gave good coverage and looked really cool, because, you know, I guess Hugo Boss design, not the best quality steel. So it was heavy steel, but not all that protective. Where, said, what's interesting as well is the fact this is essentially a Stahlhelm, you know, the Swiss M71. You can tell it's a Stahlhelm, but look, you know, from looking at it, but it's got none of the big ridges that Stahlhelms had. In CSS, as in Counter-Strike Source brand, and it is an S10, it's just not all that accurately modelled, is the answer to that. That's a good point, Rich. I think you might have mentioned that before, but yeah, the fact that they essentially just take motorcycle armor or right armor and then, you know, like resell it at a higher price. Yes, Justin, the best tanks in World War II were probably American Sherman tanks, just because by the end of the war, they'd got, you know, them down to being well-made, mass-produced tanks. The issue with a lot of German tanks was over-engineering. As good as a lot of German tanks were, you know, especially on a one-to-one basis, they were over-engineered, you know, cost too much to make. They didn't have enough spare parts for a lot of them and stuff like that. I've sort of done videos like that already for Had, if I'm saying your name right, sorry. Yeah, exactly, like Medina just said, field repairs and things like that. So yeah, you've got the T-34, which, although it is a bit of a death trap, is, you know, really mass-produced, and they did a good job of mass-producing it. But yeah, I think the thing people need to remember when it comes to army stuff is logistics. How cheaply can you make it? How fast can you make it? How long is it going to last? You know, how easy is it to train people to use? How good is it in comparison to other things? Where a lot of people take one of those values and think that beats everything else. No, I'm not preparing for World War III, although I do like these retro Swiss helmets. Yeah, if you want to see a comparison with it, I got both of them out today. So here's the retro one. Yeah, see, again, if you got a French helmet from, you know, from the 80s for that price, you know, why not? Oh, the strap broke on this earlier when I was filming a video on it. Because due to the age of the leather and the fact it's one of those snap-to-close clasps, you know, like pull it hard to get it to detach clasps, the leather gave out. So I've just taken the liner out now for the strap system, so it just sits more flushly on my head. But yeah, so essentially all this helmet was getting this and taking these sizes down quite a bit, which you can probably actually see there. It's mostly the same shape, just without the big skirts on it. But, you know, that's the thing I like with Stahlhelms, is that, you know, like you get these German ones, you get the German World War II ones, you get the German World War I ones, you get the Swiss ones, you know, there's so many different varieties you can do on the Stahlhelm when they're essentially the same fundamental original helmet design. Well, this is the older one, bear in mind. This is the 1918 style helmet that they kept until the 1970s, although, again, they didn't get rid of all of them. So then this is the helmet they came out with in the 70s that's fundamentally the same kind of head bit there. It's just, you know, nowhere near as big skirts on it. If you see how much this covers, it still does a very good job of head coverage because of how clever the, you know, going up and down ridge design is. Oh yeah, and Finns had Stahlhelms as well, and the Spanish. I've got it, Hype. I don't know where it is off the top of my head. I think it's probably where the other night vision scope mounting stuff is. So I'm going to need to dig all that out at some point so I can use it to make the videos a bit more professional. Yeah, it looks more like the Fallschirmjäger helmets, doesn't it? I can see that. Yeah, it makes sense, Richard, doesn't it? But again, there's lots of people that never seem to think of that when they talk about historical stuff, you know. So yeah, the Stowhelm design everybody's familiar with is this one. I know this is the fireman's helmet variant, but you know, it's the fundamentally the same metal shape as the World War II Stowhelms. But again, you know, the Swiss one gives you a bit more coverage. Essentially, the Swiss one just has longer skirts. That's really the only difference with it. But yeah, as we've said many times, you know, people need to remember that logistics comes down to a lot of different things. You know, a very good product is the one that can be made cheaply and easily without much that can go wrong with it. You know, it's reliable in the field, easy to train soldiers to use, you know, but still a good piece of equipment. Yep, I know the one you mean, the Fahadin helmet or whatever it's called, Medina. I mean, the problem is they cost shitloads of money. You know, even though I know it's a pretty shit helmet, I wouldn't mind getting one, but I'm not spending like $1,000 on a helmet. Best modern Geiger counters for $400 or less. Probably EcoTest's model above the Therapy. And there's probably a few other companies that do really good sort of little handheld digital units. It's hard to say because with Army Surplus, most of it isn't that expensive. And it depends what you want the Geiger counter for. I don't really do Q&As anymore, LX Saint, because mostly, unless they're a themed Q&A, like around a certain subject, people can just ask questions in the streams and I can answer them. Let me look up the Radioscan models, because they do different models, don't they? Yeah, the Radioscan one's nice, especially on the alpha window on, because Surviving the Apocalypse has one. But bear in mind, it's like a very sensitive counter to sort of mid-range radiation. It's not still good if you want to get a really high range. Also, the other problem with the Radioscan is if you accidentally contaminate it, because it's got an alpha probe on it, your Geiger counters become useless that cost you a lot of money. Which is why when he did that video recently of the DP60 scale, he made like a custom bench thing so he could take a reading without getting the DP60 scale up to the counter. Wow, it's probably not going to be useful anymore, Ethan, due to the age. But at that point, there shouldn't have been asbestos in them or anything like that. Oh, that would be very good hype because, yeah, they are. Like I said, these are really good counters for like how solid the case is and everything. And as I've said before, these don't give false readings on the plasma bores. I've answered you there, the Wolf. I've literally said there's not really a best Geiger counter. It's what do you want it for? If you've got unlimited money to spend, you want to buy a very good modern digital scintillator, not a Geiger counter, because it will actually tell you what type of radiation you're experiencing. But again, it comes down to budget, size, vulnerability of the unit. I mostly prefer just collecting like militaria towards CBRN stuff, Medina. So like gas masks, radiological instruments, you know, some protective gear. Yeah, I'm just waiting for this to start up properly. So yeah, it's like, so I'm going to say when these get on the civilian market, like Hype said, the Wolf, you might find one of these really, really useful. For household radiation, though, that Radioscan should be absolutely fine, the Wolf. But again, it really depends, though, because like a SOX01M is pretty good for house radiation, and that's got a really easy to read interface, you know, and stuff like that. But again, there's so many pros and cons of different Geigers. It gets really, really hard to recommend them. The more Geigers I get, the more and more good and bad features I notice in lots of different models. Yeah, see, this is a really nice one I bought from Hype a while ago. So yeah, if these do end up on the civilian market, that'd be amazing. But yeah, if they did bright yellow ones like the old civil defense yellow, that would be amazing. But it depends what the use is going to be for it. I know that might sound like a how long is a bit of string question, but again, it depends on what you're using it for. Like if you got a good surplus Geiger counter, that can tell you what the radiation levels around like in your house. Plus, it's a cool piece of equipment. You know, if you've got a really good, you know, gas mask, you've got a thing that protects you from any sort of airborne vapors or whatever. It depends where it is for HAD. In certain areas, yes, they're still radioactive from nuke tests. In lots of areas, there's no difference. But yeah, as you can see from that, when the display comes back on, the background radiation in this room, especially of the case on this one, is very, very good at the moment. I'm not a very Christian man, Mr. Grinder Man, if you've ever listened to many of my videos. I swear way too much to be Ned Flanders. Yep, correct. RS-70 and a PMG-2, because it was one of the ones that was on display when I had the rifle up there, but because the rifle's come down, I haven't put all enough mounts in to have all the masks hanging up there. Because again, like if you wanted something practical for detecting radiation, you wouldn't want anything that big, would you? So there you go. This one that I was just showing you, as I said, FSZ03 says it there, if it focuses. But these are kind of modern Chinese military ones that, as Hype said, hopefully there's a civilian variant coming out soon for like mass production and sale. It has both a dosimeter function and your current radiation function when it goes back on. And you can adjust the brightness and adjust the alarms and everything like that. YouTube policy, Gazov. So I've still got it. It's just YouTube has got really shitty now about guns on streams for some reason. I know there's an AK behind me, but all you can see is the barrel there for it. So RPK. But. Yes and no, Chris. In terms of purely Russian helmets, no. In terms of Soviet-designed helmets that were used in other Warsaw Pact countries, yes. And modern Russian helmets, definitely no. I've done videos trying to explain that for HAD, but it completely depends how you're exposed to it and what levels. There's background radiation around all the time that's never going to harm you. You know, and if you looked at a bit of uranium pitchblende or something, that's also not going to harm you. It's more, does it get into your body through inhalation, ingestion? Iodine as well is only helps against iodine 131. Otherwise, it's totally useless, and you have to take it in advance. I already answered that, Ethan. I said you need to use silicon lubricant to buff them out, but it's rubber blooming. It just happens as time goes on. Right, see you, man. What was that about? Yellow cake, sorry, glow in the dark. I know what yellow cake is, but I'll be careful what I say about yellow cake on here, because I think people have been reported for yellow cake before. But I don't have any yellow cake, thankfully. And I mean that completely seriously. I do not have any yellow cake. Yellow cake, as far as I'm aware, is the first stage of uranium enrichment, isn't it? It's like an oven glove kind of material, a random Hungarian. It's like very thick, cottony sort of stuff. I think if you lick the elephant's foot, you wouldn't be licking much else afterwards. All right, yeah, harmless unless inhaled. Yeah, well, it's the interesting thing of uranium, especially if it's not enriched uranium, glow in the dark. I mean, I'm sure you know this because obviously what you used to do as a job, but it's kind of fascinating. Is the gamma rays that come off of like U-238, for example, aren't very energetic. So although they give off gamma rays, so with some Geigers, you can hear all the gamma rays coming and you think, oh, that's a lot. It's actually not. So the Fiesta wear, interestingly, if I'll show this in the video when I demonstrate the Plessy, but the PDRM82D, because that's got a really thick gamma shield on the actual like gamma probe, the Fiesta wear doesn't really register on it because all the beta and the soft gamma's like not getting through. Whereas what I find really interesting is stuff like this. The digital ionization chambers, because I know the display's not very good on that, but that'll go down in a minute when it calibrates itself and zeroes itself. But the interesting thing with these digital ionization chambers, is that they give a much more accurate reading of radiation because they're actually measuring ionization of the air and not whatever else. Basically, look up all the laws yourself, radioactive cow, but over here, as long as you're not doing anything stupid with it, as in endangering other people, it's pretty much all legal unless it's a certain list of things you can't own. But the main thing is making sure, you keep it safely. So all my stuff that's actually, dangerous, as in like radium painted stuff, I lock in a safe. So, nobody can be around it without my permission kind of thing, and people couldn't steal it and do stupid shit with it. Like stuff like pitch blende, I've just got on a shelf over there because it's so, not scary when it comes to radioactive sources. But yeah, I like the way they work glow in the dark just because, especially with modern digital ones, because obviously the issue with old ionization chambers were they weren't sensitive enough. So you use a Geiger counter for sensitive readings, an ion chamber for, oh shit, there's radiation everywhere readings. But the nice thing is obviously with modern digital ionization chambers is they can go as low as background radiation. So you can then use them with a Geiger counter to compare, like true readings from things compared to like more sensitive overreading. But yeah, I love how these look. That you take the cover off and you've got a very very shiny Miele window, whatever they call it, which is just like a little tiny thin piece of like foil over the box where the ion chamber sits. Not really hype, because how this one works is you've got the circuit board that's all like on that bit. The battery compartment is there. The two 9-volts go in there and connect to there. So it basically has an 18-volt input. The circuit board's all there, and then bits of it fit there. If I get an old CDV for comparison, size-wise, they're not too different. But let's just see what happens if you can get this to... if that's what you mean, but yeah. I wouldn't want to take one of these apart to try and retrofit it into an old ion chambers box. But yeah, out of interest, if you mean will it sort of go into here? Almost, yeah. So you can tell Victorine made both of them, can't you? Yeah, that sounds very interesting though, glow in the dark. But yeah, obviously the latches aren't on there to attach it to there, but as you can see, the actual kind of casing is very, very similar. But again, Victorine made all these originally. So, it doesn't surprise me. A Victorine 450, it kind of is built to similar dimensions as a Victorine 720. The 715 would probably be a better fit for it, because obviously the 720 is a lot bulkier than the 715. But, like with this one, this is one that, the lowest scale it does is basically 1 Rontgen, 2 Rontgen, 3 Rontgen, and it's only after about 500 millirontgen that it becomes accurate. The 715 does it, from the 100 millirontgen range, but, digital ion chambers are way more handy. I've tried it on a Americinium. The alpha radiation from a Americinium doesn't get quite through the window of it, but the gamma gets through, and it gives a higher gamma reading, interestingly, with ion chambers than it does with Geiger counters. The reason being that the gamma energy, the ion chambers actually know how energetic those gamma rays are, like a scintillator, whereas Geiger counters essentially just think all gamma is equal, any count of gamma is equal to any other count of gamma. A simple way of summing it up before I go off, and again, if you watch the ion chamber video I did recently, it will explain this a bit better. But the thing is a Geiger counter, how a Geiger counter works is it does counts, as in counts per second or counts per minute. And if it shows you a dose equivalent, basically it's every time it counts, it's saying like 5 counts equals like 1 microsievert of whatever kind of isotope, something like that. So it's isotope specific. Ionization chambers measure the pure ionization of the air. The reason that's better is a Geiger counter will only give you completely accurate readings on a dose equivalent if you're putting it against the same thing it's been calibrated on. So if you had a Geiger counter, for example, calibrated on cesium-137, you could take readings from lots of stuff and it'd give you an artificially high reading because it's very low energy decays that are hitting it, but the Geiger thinks it's higher. Whereas if you put on Cobalt 60, it'd be giving you like an artificially low reading, because the Cobalt 60 is actually scarier in terms of energy than, say, the cesium, but the Geiger just thinks it's cesium. So yeah, that's kind of how they work. But again, there's pros and cons to Geiger's, ion chambers, and everything else. But I think as technology gets better, there'll probably be more and more digital scintillators brought out, hopefully, which, you know, in like 10 years' time, if there's an affordable handheld digital scintillation device, that would be amazing, because what a scintillator can do, it sees the range of the energies being produced, then it works out what the isotopes are from the spikes in, you know, like the energy spectrum, and it can tell you exactly what the dose you're receiving is, because it knows what the energy of it is. But yeah. Oh, awesome. Did it come with the old batteries in it, Ash? That's amazing if it did. But yeah, most of them obviously don't come with the old batteries in at all, and they're completely obsolete batteries. But yeah, if your works, that's amazing. Make sure you film a video on it, because yeah, if you've got a Mark 1 contamination meter and it still ticks, do a video on it. But yeah, I'll be off now. Thank you everybody that donated. Tonight's video at 5 p.m. is the proper video demonstrating night vision out and about, so I'm sure you'll love it. So it goes on at 5 p.m. and it's 4 minutes of the night vision being taken around outside. And you know, they're really good. And then the video on Wednesday coming up is the actual proper review of that night vision plus some footage. And then the video for next Friday is the Swiss M71 helmet review, and then I've got some other videos to get filmed. But yeah, have a good evening, day, everybody, and see you all. Stay safe. Right, goodbye.